Trail talk time. Out on another beauty of a trail. Gorgeous day out. Breathing in that fresh ass chi. Vibing with nature right now. A bit of a windy day, but I wanted to continue diving deeper into this whole coronavirus or COVID-19 situation and start to, look behind the scenes a little bit more. I've been doing a lot of research on the topic and what's going on, and seeing a lot of different things happening. I've spoken a lot about certain things in my last few videos, but I wanted to continue to keep the discussion going and look deeper into the situation. Again, I think, if you're only looking to the mainstream media, you're getting a very limited perspective of what's going on. So I think it's important to research and to look what's happening worldwide and, look beyond that official narrative or story that's being pushed so much in mainstream media. And one thing that I see happening is this whole thing, being something that's, happening to bring more power and control to certain people, right? And I talked about, things coming back towards Bill Gates, right? And I talked about the whole Agenda 21 thing, and he's been so motivated to push for these vaccines and everything, and to try and track people and have everybody on the planet vaccinated with these microchips, and questioning why he's doing this. And we can look to his involvement in this whole situation even more deeply. Like, people are getting so many statistics and everything and relying on information from the World Health Organization, right? The WHO. And Bill Gates is such a huge factor in everything that goes on within that organization. And yet he really has no background in the health sector, in anything to do with biology or human anatomy or any type of science like that. He just has the money to put towards these things, and it's quite a conflict of interest, because he has so much say in what goes on in this giant organization that's supposed to be, bringing forth this information for the world on such an important topic on our health. So he can decide, the direction that this giant organization is going based on whatever he feels like, because he has so much say in it. So, we might not want to just rely on this organization to give us these type of statistics and everything. One person who really doesn't have the qualifications has so much say in what goes on in this organization. So, we have to question it and look outside of that organization for answers. just like the mainstream media. You know, like every mainstream source is pushing certain stories for certain reasons, right? And most of the big news outlets and media outlets are simply, you know, bought out and paid for by people who have a lot of money and want to push forth certain agendas. So again, there's a huge conflict of interest there. And this happens all the time with things like studies as well, scientific studies and everything. You have to look to, you know, the bias. Normally there is a bias one way or another, but we have to look, well, what is the bias and who's, you know, looking to profit off of this? And that's what's been happening for so long in this world, is that instead of coming up with solutions for things to actually get to the root of the problems that are going on, people who have a lot of money continue to put it towards things that will make them more money, and they don't really care about the people's well-being. You know, they say there's no money in the cure for something, right? If you cure something, you can't continue to make money from, you know, trying to cure it. So instead of looking to actually cure something, these big pharmaceutical, you know, giants and the industry at large doesn't want that to happen, so they continue to, you know, put band-aids on things and charge a lot of money for these band-aids, right? And that's how they will continue to make money. And so if we look at the big game just in terms of profits, well, people like Bill Gates, who want to see the whole world vaccinated and microchipped up and controlled, well, that gives him so much power to be able to figure out, you know, everybody's every move, you know, starting to learn about them. And now all of a sudden, from a marketing perspective, that gives you like unlimited access to this data, and so they can now, you know, pinpoint exactly where to place these ads, what to market to people, and how to make more money from it. So ultimately, I see things going on behind the scenes of this whole thing as just a giant money grab. And I mean, it's such an intricate design what's going on. You know, people who are in fear, in a state of panic, they don't act rationally, right? They don't use common sense. They're not calm within their mind to make sound decisions and wise decisions. And in that state, they're looking outside of themselves for some help, some guidance, to say, we need somebody to help us now. And that goes back to what I talked about in one of my previous videos about the whole Hegelian dialectic causing a problem, seeing the reaction of people, and then bringing forth this magical solution supposed to save the day. And so they're using this virus as a means to disempower people, and what better way to do it than to separate them and to force them to be separate and to scare people, you know, into even interacting with each other anymore. Like, I walk down the street and one time I just walked beside this guy, and he was like, "Whoo," and like scared me. He's like, "Yeah, fuck off, buddy," and like, you know, probably because I was like walking too close to him, just walking by on the street, on the sidewalk. And many people, as I'm like walking towards them, you know, we're approaching each other, and they just like put their head down and walk across the street on the other side. They don't even want to come near somebody. And so people are starting to fear other people, right? Just being beside them. And you know, there's so many restrictions now, and so many people have lost their business. So many people are having to sell their homes, and all of these measures are happening. And yet we look at so many of the statistics, and we really see that, you know, even if there's a high number of cases that are being shown, there's still not, you know, the most accurate testing going on. Like there was that whole incident in Tanzania where they, the guy put in some data or like RNA from a papaya, right? He labeled it as being like a female to kind of trick them. He sent a test in with with a papaya instead of like human DNA, and they brought the test back and it was positive. So this papaya tested positive for COVID-19, and he ended up firing the people that were in charge of, you know, the testing in that area and stuff like that, because it's obvious that the testing kits that they were using are not the most accurate. And I talked about that already. The way that they've been testing a lot is very questionable. But even if there are, you know, a high number of people who are contracting it or who are testing positive, there really hasn't been a lot of deaths in terms of that number. And so, you know, things are being blown way out of proportion. I like what Infinite Waters says, you know, he's like, the only pandemic going on is fear, right? He calls it the Great Panic. And that's what I see, you know. All of these mainstream media outlets and stuff pushing so much fear on people, and, you know, these new enforcements and restrictions happening. I don't think it really needs to get that far. I don't think we've needed to have this giant economic collapse all of a sudden, where so many people have lost so much business and are struggling right now and everything, you know. There's so many symbols going on where, you know, they're testing how much can we really control people. And I think the mask the mask is such a huge symbol, right? If everybody's walking around wearing a mask, then nobody's, you know, gonna be interacting and communicating with each other. You know, it's kind of like this muzzling people, you know, as a symbol to take away their freedom of speech. And well, and you know, if everyone's walking around with a mask, then can't see each other smile, right? And so I also think, well, I've done research on, the typical mask that people wear. Truly, the virus is a lot smaller. Wow, there's a crane. Truly, the virus is a lot smaller than the holes in these masks. And so, is it really doing that much good if a virus can clearly pass through, these holes in the mask? And how about wearing a mask? There's also studies showing that it's cutting off your air supply, right? You're not being able to breathe as clearly and breathe the fresh air. And that's going to start affecting your health as well. And all of these measures, being locked down in your house, it's not healthy for us. To actually boost our immune system, we need to be interacting with other things and actually coming in contact with bacteria, germs, and viruses is helpful to a certain degree to build our immune system, right? They've done countless studies about kids. You're not supposed to give them antibacterial soap and stuff too much because they need to get that bacteria. They need to come in contact with these things to actually boost their immune system, to become more adaptable and flexible. The body is smart. It's so intelligent. It knows how to deal with these things and keep us healthy. So we don't need to isolate ourselves from everything outside. The healthiest thing is to be out in nature in the fresh air and get sunlight. That sunlight is so important for us. And on a psychological level, our mental health right now, there's so many studies showing how it's declining everywhere. People are having more depression and anxiety so much. There's more alcoholism going on, There's more like abuse, domestic violence, and the suicide rates have gone up now. And all of these things, they're just gonna carry on. We haven't even seen the full effects of what's happening within the psyche of people right now because of this. Because we can't just be isolated from each other. We're a social species. We need love and connection. We need to feel like we're all in this together. And we're seeing slogans like that, but if we're so separated and we're not really allowed to be with each other and gather, then how are we going to feel that way? It's our right as human beings to be free and to gather in crowds and to travel as we like in this world. And all of these things are coming in trying to restrict all of that. And I think there's, some sneaky chess moves being made, that are purposefully creating this whole pandemic and making it worse than it really has to be. And so I think we need to wake up to that and start to look at what's really going on beyond the official narrative. And that's the most important thing to me, is just to, be informed about it. And that way we can see, okay, we know what's really going on. Now what can we do to help empower ourselves? What can we do to really create our own system for our own lives and for our communities that are really, self-sustainable? And how can we live in accordance with the laws of nature? this beautiful, sustainable ecosystem and create a world based on that beautiful balance. And starting, at an individual level, starting to ask yourself, well, what does that look like to me? And where do I fit in that type of, life that I can see us creating that's going to actually work for us? What do I want in this life, and what can I start to do now to get that momentum going in that direction? And I just watched an interview with Infinite Waters and Teal Swan last night. They were talking about all this stuff, and it's incredible. I would definitely recommend checking it out. They're very, very wise, and they were talking about people building new platforms where people actually have a freedom of speech, right? And I think that's so important. I've talked about censorship going on all across the board from these giant platforms that we all use, like YouTube and Facebook and everything. They're censoring so much information so that only a tiny bit is being shown to the people. And it's just ridiculous. And Teal talked about, well, for me personally, she's dedicated her life to whatever she's best at, right? She's going to continue carrying on what she's best at and what she feels she can bring to the table in order to help humanity in the best way. And so she's talking about, perhaps she's not the one to make an app like that. And Infinite Waters said, you're doing something amazing, and you are actually very helpful because you may be the spark, you may be the catalyst that sparks the mind or the person that's actually going to create one of these apps or something, that's gonna bring out their true talents, bring out their true gifts. And that's the type of society that I see is the most healthy, right? We're all starting to gear ourselves towards our natural gifts and abilities so that we're thriving and everybody's doing what they love and doing what they're good at. And so that's one blessing about right now, is that we have this time for ourselves to go within and to figure out what that looks like for us and what we can really do to bring out our natural gifts and abilities and start to flourish in this world, in this life. So that's basically my 2 cents on the whole situation. So I hope we use this time wisely, make the best out of our time now before things get any worse, and start to create things that are going to help us in the future. Because the power is still with us. As I said in my other videos, we are the power. Infinite Water says we're the blood of the system. We're keeping this whole heart pumping. And so if we can really recognize our true power, and everybody can bring forth that power, then there's no telling where we can go in this world. We can create the most beautiful world. And that's still the type of vision that I hold clear for humanity. Whether there's going to be some bumpy roads along the way, I have faith that through it all, we can continue to grow in a more loving way and continue to shift in a beautiful way, because the world as we knew it, it's not going to be the same as we knew it. So it's still an opportunity right now to shift into something better. And there may be a lot of chaos along the way, but we must deal with that. And so let's deal with it wisely. Let's realize what's going on, and let's, focus on what we can do individually and as a collective to start bringing forth more positive changes. So that's it for today. Hope everyone has a beautiful day. Stay empowered, stay clear, and continue to let love guide you, because that's what we need more than ever right now. Peace and limitless love.